We all love horror movies. They're fun and entertaining, and we like being scared. But what's even scarier than a scary movie? A scary movie based on a true story. So here's 10 horror movies that are based on true stories. Number 10. 1988's Child's Play. Child's Play is about a mother who gifts a doll to her son, unaware that it is possessed by the disembodied soul of a serial killer. It was a box office hit that quickly earned a cult following and spawned 6 sequels and a reboot in 2019. Child's Play was inspired by the real-life Robert the Doll. Robert was given to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, who went by Gene, in 1904. Gene had what others described as an unhealthy relationship with the doll that continued into adulthood, taking it everywhere and even speaking about it in the first person. Legend has it that the doll possessed supernatural abilities that allowed it to move and change its facial expressions. Friends and neighbors reportedly heard the doll speak and saw it moving on its own throughout the house. It never killed anyone like the doll in Child's Play, but it purportedly threatened people. Eugene died in 1974, and Robert was donated to Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where it is locked in a glass case. Number 9. 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The film is about a group of cannibals, notably Leatherface, who attacked a group of people when their car runs out of gas. Although the plot itself is fictional, the character of Leatherface was inspired by convicted murderer Ed Gein. Ed Gein was only convicted of 2 murders, but when he was arrested, authorities found in his possession a belt made out of female nipples, a wastebasket, lampshade, and seat covers made from human flesh, human skulls as bed knobs and soup bowls, leggings made from skinned human legs, masks made from human faces, and the head of one of his murder victims in a box. Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't the only film on my list inspired by Ed Gein. Number 8. 1960's Psycho. Psycho centers around Norman Bates, who runs the Bates Motel, his difficult relationship with his mother, and an investigation into the disappearance of a young woman who was murdered at the hotel. At the end of the film, we learn that Norman has multiple personalities, one of which is his mother. Mrs. Bates has been deceased for some time, but Norman has kept her body even though it has decomposed. Ed Gein shared some traits with Norman, in that they both had mothers who were controlling while they were alive. They both sealed off a room in their house as a shrine to their deceased mother, and they both dressed in women's clothes and took on the role of their mother. Number 7. 2008's The Strangers. The Strangers is a psychological home invasion thriller where a couple's stay at a vacation home is interrupted by 3 masked intruders. When the woman asks why they are doing this, one of the intruders responds, "Because you were home." Director Brian Bertino said of the plot that it was inspired by a series of break-ins that occurred in his neighborhood as a child. He said, "As a kid, I lived in a house on a street in the middle of nowhere. One night, while our parents were out, somebody knocked on the front door and my little sister answered it. At the door were some people asking for somebody who didn't live there. We later found out that these people were knocking on doors in the area and, if no one was home, breaking into the houses." He also cited the 1969 Manson family murders as inspiration. Some journalists have compared the film to the 1981 Ketty Cabin murders, which remains unsolved, although this has never been confirmed by Bertino. There are also notable similarities between The Strangers and 2006's Them, which is said to be based on an Austrian couple murdered while vacationing in the Czech Republic. Number 6. 1973's The Exorcist. The Exorcist follows the demonic possession of a 12-year-old girl and an exorcism performed by 2 priests. The real story took place in 1949 and involved a 14-year-old boy documented as Robert Mannheim or Roland Doe, although his real name has never been disclosed. The exorcism was performed at Election Brothers Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri by William S. Bodern. Investigations have repeatedly questioned the claim that it was really a case of demonic possession and uncovered evidence that it was little more than a case of a teenager seeking attention. Without diving too far into such things, I'll let you look into it for yourself and come to your own conclusions. But whatever the true story, it arguably spawned one of the scariest films ever made. Number 5. 2003's Open Water. Open Water is about an American couple who gets left behind in shark-infested waters while scuba diving. It's based on the disappearance of Tom and Eileen Lonergan in 1998. They went on a guided scuba diving trip on the Great Barrier Reef with the Outer Edge Dive Company and were accidentally left behind when the tour guides failed to take an accurate head count. They weren't reported missing for a full 2 days, and their bodies were never found. In the film, the couple is shown to have drowned before being devoured by sharks. Obviously, it's all speculation since it's impossible to know their fate for sure. Gear recovered intact after rescue efforts failed suggests that the couple did not succumb to an animal attack, but rather removed their gear voluntarily when they became dehydrated and disoriented. Number 4. 2002's The Mothman Prophecies. The film follows journalist John Klein on his investigation into alleged Mothman sightings in and around Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966 and 1967. The real story was documented by John Keel in his book by the same name, where he discussed his investigation and connected the Mothman with the collapse of the Silver Bridge across the Ohio River in 1967. Number 3. 1979's The Amityville Horror. The film follows the Lutz family and their experience in an Amityville, New York home where the DeFeo murders had been committed the year before, when Ronnie DeFeo Jr. murdered his parents, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters with a shotgun while they slept. After just 28 days in the home, the Lutzes fled, claiming paranormal phenomena. The film largely stays true to the book of the same name written by Jay Anson, and the Lutzes maintained until their deaths that the events in the book were mostly true. However, many of the claims made, such as physical damage to the house and general unusual happenings, have been refuted by neighbors who lived in the area at the time. Ed and Lorraine Warren investigated the house shortly after the Lutzes left and believe that the house is occupied by an evil presence due to its history. An infrared photograph taken during their investigation purportedly shows a boy with glowing red eyes. Number 2. 2005's The Exorcism of Emily Rose. The Exorcism of Emily Rose follows a priest on trial for negligent homicide following an exorcism, and the legal counsel representing him. It's based on the story of Anneliese Michel, on which the German film Requiem is also based. Following the exorcism, Anneliese died in her home of dehydration, malnutrition, and pneumonia, according to the autopsy report. The priests Ernst Alt and Arnold Renz were found guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence. While the film relies heavily on creative license, it is true that the trial centered around the debate on whether Anneliese was truly possessed by demons or if she was an unfortunate victim of mental illness. Number 1. 2013's The Conjuring. The Conjuring was the first installment in the Conjuring franchise, which follows demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren and their real-life investigations of paranormal activity, hauntings, and demonic possession. Several film spin-offs, such as Annabelle, focus on some of the demonic entities the Warrens have encountered. The real-life Annabelle was actually a Raggedy Ann doll, which is currently stored in the Warrens' private collection in Monroe, Connecticut. The original Conjuring film focused on the Perron family, which the Warrens attended to when they experienced disturbing events on their Rhode Island property in 1971. If you liked this video, please leave a comment. Subscribe, and hit that little bell to get notifications.